Good morning. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to this meeting of the Charlotte Unified Development Board of Adjustment on May 29th, 2024. My name is Deborah Dryden, and I am chair of the board. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to this meeting of the Charlotte Unified Development Board of Adjustment on May 29th, 2024. My name is Deborah Dryden, and I am chair of the board. Also sitting on today's board is Kevin Shea, Amy Sun, Marsha Williamson, Gary Young, Hamilton Court. Also present are Solomon Fortune, our zoning administrator, Lisa McCarter, planning program manager, John Kinley, senior project manager, Crystal Monsegur, planner, Kamisha Lampley, clerk to the board, Teree Hagler-Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney Advisor to the staff, Nicole Hewitt, Assistant City Attorney Advisor to the board, and Candy Thomas, the Veritex Court Reporter. Each of today's hearings is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions. These rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and ordinance standards, not personal preferences or opinion. Parties with standing have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the city, and individuals who can show they will suffer specific damages. Other individuals may provide testimony as witnesses when recognized by the board. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. Any individual wishing to speak as a witness today was required to sign up. If you haven't done so, please do so now. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts of increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they based their opinion. While hearsay evidence is not specifically excluded, it is only given limited weight. The parties to each case are entitled to an impartial decision maker. A board member may not participate in a hearing if he or she has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close familial business or associational relationship with an affected person. The parties in each case also have a right for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may include site visits as well as conversations with parties or the general public. At the start of each case, any potential conflict of interest or ex parte communication should be disclosed by a board member. If applicable, these matters may also be raised by any affected party. Today's meeting will follow the order printed on the agenda. The order of the regular agenda will be as follows. All parties who plan to give testimony must be sworn in. A city staff member will present a summary of the variance request for the decision being appealed. The board may question the staff member, and then the applicant may question the staff member. The applicant presents their testimony in the case. The board may question the applicant, and city staff may question the applicant. The applicant may present other sworn witnesses. They will also be subject to questioning by the board and the staff. Other parties wishing to speak for or against an application will be given reasonable time to present sworn testimony. The staff and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After hearing each case, the board will review each case and render a decision. This is usually done in closed deliberations after hearing each case. The chairperson calls for a motion and a second to approve or deny the variance or appeal. In the case of an appeal, the chairperson calls for a motion and a second to uphold, modify, or reverse the administrator's decision. The decision will be made by a simple majority vote of the board. However, the board may elect to take up to 30 days to render a decision. You may remain present during the deliberations, or you may call the zoning staff after the session to receive the decision of the board. All exhibits must remain with the board. If your case is not appealed to Superior Court after 30 days, you may pick them up or they will be destroyed. An appeal from this board is to the Mecklenburg County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the date of the board's written decision in which to appeal in accordance with NCGS 160D-405D. In order to receive a written copy of the decision, any aggrieved party must file a written request for a copy of the board's decision by filling out the form, which must be filed with the board's clerk of or chairperson at the time of the hearing of the case. Okay, we now open the evidentiary hearing for Ms. Hewitt. Which one am I doing first?
We would go in the order as it's printed, so it would be 2024-00019.
Okay, the property is located at 3019 Selwyn Avenue. Before we begin, does any board member have a conflict of interest or potential conflict? At this time, I will administer the oath for the individuals who intend to be a witness, okay? Mr. Kinley, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right.
And we did have this, I don't know if Ms. Hewitt mentioned this already, we did have this item on the recommendation agenda, but we have a member of the audience here to speak in opposition. So we're gonna do this as a full hearing. So just so that everybody in the room's on the same page with what is happening. I'll start by saying this is a Custom Homes Carolina LLC is the applicant, represented by Travis Gringus and David Murray for the property located at 3019 Selwyn Avenue. And it's owned by Custom Homes Carolina LLC. They are requesting two variances from section 19.6A1A, which to be more specific, basically section 19.6 A1A2, which is well, let me skip ahead a little bit and I'll come back to that. Number two, letter C, which driveways and parking pads shall have a maximum width of 40% of the lot up to a maximum of 24 feet in width between any part of the street facing facade and the front building line. And then part A3E, parking areas other than individual driveways are prohibited within the established front setback, and that doesn't apply to buildings that are on limited access roads, which this case is not. So it's two variance requests for two different sections that are all under that section 19.6A1A. And the first variance is to allow an increase in that driveway and parking width from 80 to 84 feet from 24 feet, which is a 60-foot increase. And then a variance to allow parking area, surface parking area other than the individual driveway within the established setback. So that would be that letter E in the UDO, where it says that parking areas other than individual driveways are prohibited within that established front setback. Here's the vicinity map of the parcel. It's located on Selwyn Avenue, north of where Woodlawn turns into Runnymede. There's a closer map of the property showing the zoning. Property to the north is O1 CD, and that's if you're familiar with that area, that is the Nell Bates house that is owned and used by Selwyn Presbyterian Church. And then surrounding the rest of the property is N1A zoning. That's this zoning of the parcel is also N1A. And then around the corner on Runnymede is a townhome development that is zoned UR2 CD. And we did also get some phone calls from neighboring residents about this case that weren't able to attend. Received a phone call from a property owner who owns this townhouse and property owner who owns the corner and this parcel to the rear. And they basically were saying that they would basically reiterate what Mr. Anderson Pearson's here to talk about. So we'll hear what he has to say after our presentation and the applicant's presentation. Property is currently vacant, and the surrounding properties are developed with a mixture of single-family homes and institutional uses and townhomes. Again, there's a closer view of the property, and it is narrower at the front on Selwyn than it is at the back. And here's a street view of the property, and Mr. Pearson's house is to the right here in this image. Requesting 2 variances, as I stated earlier. A variance to allow an increase in the driveway parking width. I think there was a typo on the previous slide. It's 76 feet from a 24-foot width, which is a 52-foot increase in the allowed driveway and parking area width between the building and the street. And then a variance to allow surface parking other than individual driveways within the established setback. So basically what we're referring to when we're talking about these standards is the ordinance says between your front building, the front of the building and the street, you're limited to a maximum width of 24 feet. And then you can't have any parking areas like this little parking area there in front of the building, between the building and the street. And again, here's a more detailed view of that. So the total cumulative width of all the driveways and parking pads, that's 76 feet. Their lot width is 73 feet. So 40% of that 73 would be 29 feet. So therefore the default of 24 feet maximum would apply, which would be a 52-foot increase over what they're providing is, or proposing is a 52-foot increase over the minimum, that's 24 feet. I will say that there is a text amendment that is proposing to take out the maximum 24-foot cap and just say 40% of the cumulative lot width, which would still mean that they would need a variance for what they're proposing, and it would make a 5-foot difference between the 52, instead of a 52-foot increase, it'd be 5 feet less. And that text amendment is proposed to go to City Council for a decision at their June City Council meeting, I believe. I'm looking at Solomon. I think it's June. Tentatively for June is when that text amendment would be included. So then the other variance is this parking area that they have out front. There's 4 spaces here in this area that's outlined. The established front setback is basically anything between the building and the street. And so that parking area is supposed to be to the rear if you're going to meet that requirement of the ordinance. The applicant is providing a 4-foot brick privacy fence along the street frontage and landscape screening shrubs around the parking area to the south and to the north and the street face. Selwyn Avenue is considered a two-lane or 2+ avenue with buffered bike lanes. And if you look at the street cross section from the land development standards manual, there is no on-street parking. So that means that all the parking would have to be provided on site. This is the standards for granting a variance. All 4 have to be met. And I'll give you a minute to look over the findings of fact in front of you before I read through these. A topo. I don't have it in front of me, but well, this slide would probably work best. There's a bit of a rise right in this area, I think, and then a little bit of a rise here, and then it's kind of slopes towards the back. It's a little bit of a slope here, and then there's a rise coming off of Selwyn. You can kind of see it on the street view as well. So you rise up a bit off of Selwyn, and then there's a little bit of a rise here where that bush is, and then a rise kind of in the back, and then it drops off to the north into the back, and then off to the side towards Mr. Pearson's property as well.
Looking at this picture, where are they putting the parking pad?
The parking pad would be in this area here. It's hard to know exactly what the distances are, but the parking pad would be there. The driveway would come in here. So you, right, the driveway location will change from what it is currently. So the driveway would come in here, you'd turn into the parking area, and then the individual driveways into the units would be back here. And the triplex would sit towards the back of the lot. It's a little bit deceiving on the street view because the lot does get wider as you go further back. And in this view, because of the shrubs and bushes here and then the shrubs here, it makes it look like it actually gets narrower as you get further back. But it does get quite a bit wider as you get to the back property line.
John, so the plan for triplex has already been approved?
So it's been through what we call the LDIRL, which is Land Development Individual Residential Lot Review, I think is what it's called. And with that review, it is they go through urban forestry review and stormwater review. It doesn't include any sort of construction, grading plans, zoning's not a part of that review. All of that happens once they go to the county to get their actual construction and building permits.
Is there any plan for stormwater detention on the bottom of that site?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what is included because the plans basically what was in the plans submitted is what you see pretty much here. There's not any like detailed grading plan or anything, but stormwater did review the plans that they submitted and approved them, but they got approval from both urban forestry and stormwater.
I'll just remind the board members that whenever you're going to speak, please turn on your microphone so that it can be captured for the recording.
And John, how wide is the total lot width and the front? I couldn't see from the picture.
So it's 73 feet at the setback line, which is how we would measure lot width. So lot width is 73 feet by definition of the zoning ordinance, but again, it's 73 feet there. It widens out to, I think it's a total of 84 feet right here where the driveway is at the widest. If you measure from the property line to property line, I'm not sure what the width is at the back. I don't see a dimension, so I'm not sure what that width is.
122.
122, and then at the front, it's a little bit narrower. I would say it's probably roughly 60 something feet, probably looking at that.
So help me understand how the city code is interpreting this, that you're not looking at the width of Selwyn. You're looking at the widest width of the driveway.
Right, so the way the ordinance reads is that the maximum width of 40% of the lot width. So that's lot width is measured at the setback line. So you take the width of the lot at the setback line and 40% of that, or 24 feet, whichever is, I think it's whichever smaller.
But you're not looking at the entranceway. You're looking at the widest part of the driveway.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the widest part of the driveway, the total cumulative width of the driveway is limited, but to that 24 foot or 40%, whichever applies.
I'm confused looking at this. I see the driveway going in. So what's on the either side of the driveway? It's just more concrete?
So there's a little bit of a curb here and here that wraps around. So that's curb. And then here you'd have it's a 5-foot side yard, so 5 feet of landscaping. In this case, they can plant whatever they propose here. They are proposing to provide the screening shrubs 5 feet on center from this point over to that point, and that was staff's request as a condition to screen the parking areas where the most intense amount of parking would be from the neighboring property. And then on the north side, again, you've got a 5-foot side yard. The driveway is encroaching a bit into that corner, which is permitted, but that is, they've got screening shrubs there as well.
So how wide is the actual driveway?
24 feet for the part that's actually going out to Selwyn.
So John, I think you just answered what I wanted to clarify. Based on what staff supports and looking at these plans, they've already agreed to include what staff has recommended.
The conditions, yes.
Yes.
They've already agreed to the conditions to provide the screen wall along Selwyn and the screening shrubs here and here, 5 feet on center.
What's a typical driveway width in this zoning district? If you were just building a single family house in a single family neighborhood, what's a standard driveway?
It would depend on whether or not you'd want it to be a one-way driveway or a two-way driveway. I would say anywhere from between, I think our minimum driveway width allowance is 10 feet. So it'd be anything from 10 to 20. Typically a two-way would be 24 feet. But single family homes or even this type of development, potentially you'd have ways to, a single family home, you'd have a way to do like a circular driveway or something like that as well. You wouldn't be able to do that in a case like this because you're more than likely your circular driveway would be more than the 24-foot maximum. Typically, if a project has room on the lot and it doesn't narrow like it does in this case, what you would see to meet the ordinance requirements is a driveway that comes past the building, and then you have the parking and driveways in the rear. Or you do something like you could do in this zoning district, you could also do a duplex that has 2 10-foot driveways and be under that 24-foot cap. Or you could, in the zoning district, you can also do single family homes, and there are no restrictions really on driveways for single family homes. Any other questions, or did you all have a chance to look over the findings of fact? Already, I'll proceed. Unnecessary hardships result from the strict application of the ordinance. Again, it's a triangular shaped property that results in the proposed triplex being located towards the rear of the parcel, which restricts the ability to place the driveways wider than 24 feet to the side or rear of the building. And the lot is 73 feet wide at the setback line. And accounting for 24-foot driveway and side setbacks, that would only leave 39 feet of width for any sort of structure, including the proposed triplex. Hardships result from conditions that are peculiar to the property based on location, size, or topography. It's a triangular shaped property which is narrower in the front than it is in the rear. And there's an existing 16-inch elm tree that they're protecting in the front setback. And I'll just show you real quick where that is located. So that's here. Hardship does not result from actions that are taken by the applicant. The hardship results from the lot configuration. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit and purpose intent of the ordinance, and that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Selwyn Avenue is a 2+ lane avenue, which is our arterial street classification that is defined as a street that has moderate to high volume volume surface streets. And due to the higher intensity of the street classification, narrowing of the right of way along the road, parking area has moved further back into the lot. The triplex does not encroach on the side yards abutting single family homes, and granting the variance would not adversely affect the adjacent contiguous properties because It is set back in the wider portion of the lot. Granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The proposed development will be compliant with all other UDO requirements. The applicant is mitigating the visual impacts of the driveway and parking area with the provision of a 4-foot tall screen wall along Sullivan Avenue and landscape shrubs 5 feet on center around the front and sides of the parking areas shown on the proposed revised site layout. And text amendment 2024-033, which is pending. City council approval proposes language that would increase the driveway width allowance to allow driveway widths to exceed 24 feet, but due to the narrowing of the lot, 29 feet, which is a 5-foot increase above the current limit. There's a picture of the sign on the property, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr.
I'm still
Questions?
need to get a grasp here on where staff is coming from. If this lot were perfectly rectangular, we would still have the same problem. Right, the building would be, if city had its way, the building would be closer to the street and the parking would be in the rear, correct?
Correct, yeah.
But that-
Ideally, that's how these would be loaded, unless they had a wide enough lot that would account for them to be able to get individual driveways. That would only work with once the text amendment's approved and you can do 40% of your lot, then potentially you could front load if you had a wide enough lot.
Understood. So even if what I'm trying to get at though is, even if that were rectangular, what would the layout change? Because you would not be able to have that building in the front and the parking in the back as I look at that. Am I correct? It'd still be in trouble. So it sounds like the applicant's view is that the lot is an odd shape and that is why we need the variance. My question is, staff is looking at that and agreeing with it, except that the fact, if that were perfectly rectangular, the building configuration still causes a problem that they would still need to be here today.
They might be able to do something with with the size and widths of their buildings and units to be able to make it work if it was rectangular.
Yes.
I don't, I'm not an architect or a land designer, so
Again, I'm just trying to understand where staff is coming from in this. Right now, the focus is that it's an odd shaped lot, hence the variance is required.
correct.
Correct. Thank you.
And just to,
Go ahead.
just to clarify, the reason they're requesting this is because they want to build a triplex so that everyone can have access to parking. But if they build a duplex or a single family, this problem wouldn't exist, right?
It's a fair statement. But what we're looking at is someone that's got a proposal for a duplex and triplex, and triplexes are permitted in the zoning district as a use. So we're looking at it as what the applicant has brought before us and them trying to make that work because that's a permitted use in the district.
Are we going to hear from the applicant today?
Yeah, they'll be
Okay.
presenting after my presentation.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Kinley. All right, will the applicant please step forward and be sworn in? Yes, swear. Gentlemen, you're free to bring a chair if you like.
We'll go ahead and introduce ourselves, members of the board. David Murray, I represent the applicant. I'm an attorney. And then I'll have Paul
Yes, and
introduce himself.
gentlemen, when you introduce yourself, if you could spell your name, please, for the court reporter.
Hi, I'm Paul Sagadin, the applicant, Sagadin.
Travis Gingraw, Gingras, civil engineer.
All right, gentlemen, do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Murray, you're presenting first, I assume?
Thank you, members of the board, for hearing us today. Thank you. There's a lot in this presentation that's just repetitive of staff's presentation. And so we adopt the staff's presentation if there's anything additional there. But again, this property fronts Selwyn Avenue. It's 3019 Selwyn Ave. Mr. Kinley already went through what the two variances are being requested here. They're under a UDO section 19.6.A.1. And so it's two variances, but it's really for the same areas, as you can see. Slide 3 is just an aerial of the property. What's unique about this property is it narrows at the front and it's very wide at the back. These are old lots through here, not part of a really formalized master plan of development. So they've all been chopped up and developed and sounds like Mario Kart.
I'm sorry.
And here's the site plan that was submitted to the LDIRL approval. I will say from the developer side of things, the city has recently clarified that zoning approval is now part of this process. There was definitely a lot of confusion as to when you got a stamped final approval of your site plan, what that meant. Everybody was taking their LDIRL approved plan, getting ready to go build. And then the city was saying, well, now we got to go review everything again. The city's now put zoning as part of this review. And as you can see, went through final approval process. Nobody had flagged any issue with the driveway during that time. This was the plan that was submitted for that. As you can see, there's additional screening from Mr. Kinley's presentation that's being added. There's a brick wall that's being added. And then there's screening that's going to be added along the southern portion of the property. And again, it's for a triplex development. Here's an aerial. This is the residential property to the south, the church-owned property to the north. Other than this house that exists here, the church property is mainly a parking lot. And I have some pictures that I'll show there. But this is a pretty major intersection. If you've been down Selwyn Avenue, as you know, it's a main thoroughfare, Runnymede also, with a large amount of traffic. These are not quiet residential neighborhoods. Same street view that the city has already included as slide 8, showing the narrow front and then it widens. These trees or shrubs are part of the property. And the driveway is being shifted over to the southern side of the property nearest the residential property. This is aerial. One of the things I wanted to point out to the board was what parking just generally looks like in this area. And the aerials aren't great. These are the Mecklenburg County bird's eye view, but it gives you an idea of what's going on next door. This is the church property. The parking is along the front setback here. And so most of this lot adjacent to us, this is our property right here, is a parking lot with the historic house next to us. From the street, looking south, as you can see here, they have a screened area and then the parking lot with a sidewalk with the historic house that's used for church property purposes. This parcel is zoned office, so it's not single family residential. And then when we look across the street from that, what you notice is the unique circumstance that's created. Now, these have been there before the new UDO, but these type of driveways would be allowed in the UDO. The unique circumstance is that if you have a single family residential house, you can have parking and driveways in the front. And so if this was a single family, we could do all of our parking, everything that we're asking to do right now in the front with a pull through. This is just an example of what exists across the street. Directly across the street from us is also a substantial amount of parking. The vehicles, they park their vehicles in the front of their house. If you go south across Runnymede, you'll see that these houses actually have parking pads in front of them. And here's a street view with a parking pad just straight off Selwyn. There's a U drive or a circular drive off this property. It is screened as we're proposing. But it's not unusual in this area to have parking in front of the residential houses. And it's not unusual immediately right next door to have parking because the majority of that lot is a parking lot. So as far as to supplement what staff's presentation was when we're looking at, especially in this last section about how it fits into the neighborhood, this is Selwyn Avenue. It's a developed area. There's office. North of us is commercial as we start to get back in towards like the Selwyn pub area where Mellow Mushroom and things like that used to be. It develops rapidly. So again, staff's already gone through these standards. I'll run through them quickly here. But again, the Board of Adjustment shall vary any provisions of the zoning ordinance upon a showing of all the following. The unnecessary hardship here is to allow the development of the triplex of by right use because of the narrow frontage as it widens to get further to the back of the property, which is the developable building envelope. The shape of the lot creates a squeeze on the property. And so the driveway area and the parking area needs to be in the front. And so actually, how do I go backwards on this? Okay, here we go. One other thing I want to point out here on this plan is that this portion, when we're talking about this portion that's adjacent to the residential house that's to the south, this portion is not part of the variance. This could be done regardless. It's the part that goes towards the office zone parcel to the north that's part of the variance. So the proposal is not bringing anything towards the residential house to the south that wouldn't be allowed already. And so it's just this area that goes to the north towards the office zone parcel. That's the area that's the focus here. This driveway would be fully compliant the way that's brought in as shown on this plan. Just a little bit of background, and I think this was brought up, but again, the applicant submitted plans going through the LDIRL approval process. They were getting ready to go vertical with their to go get the building permit. That's when they were advised that there wasn't a zoning approval that was included in that IRL approval that they were given. They did not know that. And so staff, after reviewing the plan, recommended proceeding to obtain a variance. And I put this case in, you've heard it before if you've heard my presentation. Obviously, if there's approval, even through a building permit, we would still have to come seek a variance. So there's no vested right that's created, but what I'm showing here is that they went through the process that they were supposed to go through. This was all done in good faith, and that's why we're here today. The hardship is directly related to the unique shape of the property. If we were on a smaller residential parcel or a residential fronting street, we could alleviate our parking issue with on-street parking. But we cannot do that here. So those two factors with the narrow frontage that widens to the rear, as well as our frontage on Selwyn, which is really kind of a commercial type street as it gets developed and continues to be developed and gets more density, has led to this. And so the circumstances for this variance are specific to the property. This is not a personal hardship. This is a property related hardship. No self-created hardship. We haven't taken any actions other than following the process, submitting the plan to the city, obtaining the LDIRL, and then when there was a hang up coming to this board, which is a board of last resort. And then as staff pointed out, I think in detail, there's no safety issues created here based upon this variance. The applicant would be the only one negatively affected if it were denied. The neighborhood, as I showed in the pictures, parking is very common in the front. So this is not permitting something that's not common and seen in the other adjacent parcels. One other thing that I think is important to point out here when we're looking at consistency is really everything to the north of this property on Selwyn is much more dense. And so it's really, this lot's almost kind of like a transition coming from that office zoning, which is a parking lot, down to residential. And so you would expect to see, now that the UDO's changed on these bigger lots, you would expect to see these triplex type developments. This would not be an unreasonable use of the property. It's a by right use. One interesting point is if this was single family, they could build a substantially higher structure than what they actually are allowed to do with a triplex. So, so again, the triplex use actually has some limitations because it's next to a single family house. And again, as Mr. Kinley pointed out in the UDO states, a single family house could have a U driveway with front parking in the front where the triplex is not allowed. And so you could still see parking right in front of this property if it was single family. Mr. Kinley also pointed out the conditions, just pointing out again that the screening has been added to, protect and soften that parking area and visibility from the right of way, as well as that brick wall. I forgot to type in the brick wall, but that's included. And you can see both of those here. This is slide 24, the plan that was given to city zoning staff showing the wall, the increased screening to the south, and as well as that parking area to the front. And so we're here to answer any questions. Paul's here to answer any questions that you may have. Paul, I just have you confirm that my presentation and the PowerPoint, that you would adopt those fully as if they're your presentation made here today. And so members of the board, if you have any questions for us, we're happy to answer, but we would request that you grant the variance as we've met the standards for the variance.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. And so I want to make sure I understand. You went through the LDIRL process and you were about to apply for a permit, and that's when you discovered that you had to be here?
Yeah, so learning curve, right? The UDO just got passed, all good faith, and good intent. We submitted a plan as we knew, drawn as it was. And this is what we do, the development side, infill development, things like that. So the intent of the development was to screen it, make it look, fit inside the neighborhood. This was the plan we only submitted and ever submitted. It went through review, got stamped, got approved. We were working through design, we took our design back to the city a few months later and went in and we were told at that point, we didn't have an approvable plan because it had yet gone through zoning. Now, unbeknownst to us, we didn't know that was a factor because we had a stamp plan, so we were moving forward. At that point, we then reached back out to the city as because Solomon and Shannon, very helpful, very supportive. Here's how we can help work through this. But for us, we had an approved plan, so we were trying to move forward. And I know the hardship of talking about the lot and the land. Our design was always this to set it back, get it off the street, provide parking. It's a busy road, put screening. Part of the development piece is trying to create livability on a property as well. And I know you had a question about could we do this if it was a regular lot? Well, yes, we can with the new revisions to the UDO. Because at 122 feet in width, I'd have 40%, which would be 48, which gives me 3 16-foot driveways, which I can front load garages at that point and meet the need of a 2-car garage. And as it's currently drawn, I think part of the revision has come about is where the rules of how these things work don't actually work for how you can build houses, access them, meet permeability, things like that, and create a place for people to live in their home. I know the neighbor who will have some great points, had questions about heights, and we addressed that, buffering, things like that.
All right, so I guess my question really for Solomon then, because the LDIRL process is now changed. And so the variance will be baked into that process?
Wait, before Solomon answers, Solomon, I need to swear you in if you're going to respond. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the variance possibly making is kind of.
Sorry. So the variance process, Mr. Shea, won't be baked in. Kind of what happened was, as when we were developing the UDO with the IDRL, we were kind of having stormwater and trees look at it because as part of the one thing, with single family homes, which this falls under, we allow the single family homes to get their horizontal here in the city. And then there's our zoning, we review it we do the vertical and anything responsible with zoning over in Mecklenburg County system. And kind of what they were doing over here. So it's kind of like when we started UDO, there was kind of this overlap and kind of a misunderstanding. And so staff were trying to work with the applicant, but again, obviously from his request, he would still need a variance, even if, for example, even if it was a perfect square lot or anything, he would still need it because when you review the standards of your driveway width, your length, based upon what can be in the established setback, even if this had gone through, even if, for example, zoning was reviewing in the IRL, this wouldn't have been able to be approved.
So this situation, 2 months from now, folks like these would have to come see us anyways.
On the current standards at the time of submittal, that's correct. And we went submittal back in August when we discovered this, when he arrived from the IDL was approved, so yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Solomon, I have another question. So the new amendment that's pending city council approval, is it 40% of the widest point of the lot or the average point?
It's the front, so it's the 40% of the front. So that's where we measure that setback, as John mentioned, that's so where we're basing that calculation off of.
So it's 40% of 73%.
That's correct.
So they still would come for.
So they would sue, yes.
I have a question about, is it this pad that you're talking about, how many spaces does this pad entail?
In the front there, we have 4 spots.
So is that the parking for all 3 units or do
They have 2-car garages and 2-car driveways. But with the street and just the activity of that street, we need places for people to go. Say you go over and visit, or I come over and visit, where do we park, what do we do?
Okay.
And we want to make sure that safe, people can turn out, turn around and get back onto Main Road. So that was.
So each unit has a 2-car garage
And a 2-car driveway.
and a 2-car driveway
Yes.
that they access from this little street or,
Yeah, coming right in here, those are the driveway pads going
Okay.
straight to the units.
okay.
And then creates a backyard for them to use.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have another question for Solomon. So regardless of the size and the shape of this lot, the maximum permitted driveway width right now is 24 feet, right? So
That is correct.
so even if everything, so any lot, you can build a triplex, quadplex, but you can only have 24 feet of driveway.
That's correct.
Can I say something about the driveway width? So just from an engineering standpoint, when we're talking about width, we're talking about cross-sectional width usually. It seemed like there's been interpretation at least that, this is acting essentially as a private lot. And so it's actually a more of a length than a width. If we look at the width, it's 14 feet wide, plus 18 and a half feet for parking, and then plus the driveway. Now, where am I going with this? If this is also rear loaded, we still have the same issue that the driveway is now located in the rear, but the width is still essentially the same. So how do you combat that regardless if it's front loaded or rear loaded? Again, I think there's an interpretation that's incorrect, whether that's mine or just how the code's written, but
Yeah.
something just seems off with it.
So I think we gotta, I will say, there's not an incorrect interpretation. I think we've got to say, this is kind of what the neighbor as part of the UDO, and that was something that, I guess to say, I will tell everybody in here, I'm spending a lot of time working on triplexes because I guess being upfront with everybody, I've got 50% of the community that says they want these things out of the ordinance completely, 50% who wants me to figure out a solution. So staff is working to find. So what's happening is we're running into these little quagmires like we have right here, where it's because if you had a rear loaded, what would happen is you would take your 24 feet, the driveway in the back wouldn't count towards, because once you entered the rear yard, staff wouldn't be. So ideally, you would be getting these triplexes rear loaded. Right now, the community wants them all. The development community wants them all front loaded, and that's where it's kind of this rub, because again, it's if you take single family districts, single family, the original intent was I had these, you get these 2-car garages. If you just look throughout the predominant from the 90s, early 80s and the 90s throughout the city, that was the standard we were getting.
When those garages were in the back of the lot typically, right? And so now we're sort of flipping that to try to make space for the triplexes, but they're building in the back of the lot and they're putting the parking in the front of the lot, whereas the house next door, the house is in the middle or the front of the lot, and then their garage is in the back. So it's monkeying with all the stormwater. It's gonna flow differently because of the impervious areas. So if you were consistent with the impervious areas, it would flow properly. Now we're getting there and disconnecting all the flow, going from rear yard building to front yard building to rear yard. And water goes one way.
I don't want to say, so I guess I have to be careful because I'm not a stormwater expert, but what happens typically is, it's typically when you're building a single family home, even if this was a single family home, you could still have all the impervious and it would still, that water still, so I always tell people.
If it were single family, you wouldn't be building this far back in the lot.
You could, yeah, absolutely.
In theory, you could.
Yeah, in fact, you would on this lot, because you would maximize that house. You would build it as big as you
What's the
possibly
rear yard
could.
setback?
It actually has a 50-foot
So-
setback in the front, so this is where.
What's it, 40 feet? Because I think this is N1A, so you're picking up like a 40-foot rear yard. But in theory, yes,
40-foot rear yard?
Mhm.
So what's that?
It's roughly 40 feet.
Yeah,
it
we
looks
have a
like.
40-foot rear yard right here.
Yeah, it's tree canopy and then private open space.
So, yeah.
So yard for the people. 'cause
So what I try when I'm speaking to the public, I try to tell people, don't look at it as it's the triplex. It's, you could still get impervious, because I tell people, I'll show you single family homes that have put just as much as impervious as a triplex is done, so.
Yeah,
Possibly.
and more than
So-
likely, if this was single family, because you can go up higher on single family than this can. So obviously, I mean, y'all see what these new houses look like that get built, they're monsters. And the other thing too, that's unique here is if this was single family, more than likely, it would be a massive house in the front. Then with the new ADU and accessory unit standards, you'd have a monster pool house / guest house built in the back that would be eating up most of that rear setback. So the single family can actually get you more than what the triplex can do.
I think a quick reference to your block, how those parking lots are working. If you come down that entire road, truly until you get to our lot, which is clear, it's all front face to parking. That's the flow of where the concrete is. In the reverse of designing this, then it just becomes a parking lot in the backyard because I've filled a parking lot for everybody to cross each other and get back, so it just becomes all pavement in the back. So coming back out, I think the reason we're here, when we come back to, and Solomon mentioned, it got approved as they were working through everything. We took that approval to be earnest from the city to say you can move forward. And it was only months later and said, wait, we missed what we missed. Let's go back and figure it out. There is a design intent here with the width and depth where if it was squared off, we'd have enough for front loading driveways. And based on that UDO change, which has already been gone through, we could surface straight out to there. Would it be the perfect design? We still think there's a great off-site shrubbery, parking, screening, design intent, and meeting that. And again, all we're trying to do is move with the plan that they said we could move with.
So Solomon, even though triplexes are permitted under UDO, are we gonna see more of this as people try to build triplex? Because the maximum driveway width is 24 feet and the minimum individual is 10 feet, and that's not enough parking or driveway for a triplex.
So I guess we are looking at several options. So like one of the options, they have increased driveway width, but they are also maybe changing where triplexes can be located. So there's several. We have, just because we have heard, like I said, I want to be clear, not trying to bring it up in this meeting, but the community has been very vocal and we have heard. And so staff is being, like I said, me and Lisa and myself, I am probably in 50% of my meetings and weeks are dealing with UDO and trying to figure out how to solve all the issues that have been brought to our attention.
Ms. Sutton, I just mentioned that we have a new one that we're working on, that now that we know the process, is a rear loaded product that is getting designed with that intent, because now we've been told that's how it works. So it's not our intent to go back and try and relieve this. It's our intent to move forward with what we were told we could. And now moving forward, we understand the rules that have been given to us, and now we're going that process.
That is the corner lot.
Yeah.
That's- It's a little different. And just so we're clear here, if this was rectangular, we wouldn't be here.
Correct.
It's because of the shape of the lot, how narrow it gets at the front. That's caused the situation.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Solomon, just kind of piggyback off of that. I mean, this doesn't necessarily set precedent for any other triplexes that we might see, if I'm not mistaken. This is simply just, this is a unique situation based on the property for which is being presented.
And being fair, and that's
Yeah.
how we've kind of, like I said, because this one is where you've got this narrow lot at the front and then it widens out the back, as in a perfect road you're getting, as most lots now being as developers relate, that's this perfect square rectangle.
Solomon, how does this work with fire department, and there's gotta be a pad for the fire trucks to pull in? Is that the 24-inch driveway meets that requirement, or?
So that's a different issue. So what's happening on some previous ones you saw where the hose pull for a fire truck has to be 50 feet. So if they
Right.
can fight the fire from Selwyn, the truck is gonna pull up. So now, for example,
150.
if this 150 feet gets pushed back, then it becomes, if your building gets pushed farther than 150 feet, that is what's they are asking for. You saw some of those pads. Again,
Right.
that is something we are working with fire, because again, I think what happened was at the time, fire didn't expect people to push them so far back deep in the lots, whereas for like single family, like I
Right.
said, if you think about single family where you're fronting on most of those local streets where I'm just pulling up and I can get to the hose and I'm only fighting one,
Right.
the house that's on fire and then possibly the two adjacent houses.
Just a point of curiosity, these are for purchase duplexes, triplexes? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Murray or the gentleman with their presentation? Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kinley, am I correct? There's someone in opposition?
That is correct.
Okay, sir, if you will step forward. Thank you. If you'll please state your name and spell it for the court reporter.
Anderson Pearson.
And Mr. Pearson, excuse me, let me get these papers. Do you solemnly swear to and affirm that the evidence you shall give in the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, sir. You may continue.
I have some handouts.
Thank you. Thank you. Just pulling up your documents. Two and three. Okay. Too much.
Shall I?
You may begin, Mr. Pearson. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Members of the board, my name is Anderson Pearson. My wife and I live next door at 3025 Selwyn Avenue. I'm a registered architect that specializes in infill multifamily housing. I'd like you to know I support the UDO and I support the idea of a triplex. However, I'm in strong opposition to both developers' variance requests.
Madam Chair, was this individual sworn in prior to beginning his testimony? Thank you. I just wanted to check in.
Yes.
I believe any alleged hardship is the direct result of the actions or inactions taken by the developer himself. Full approval for a triplex development as townhomes in an N1A district is a two-phase process. Basically, the residential lot review and then the townhouse permitting review. The residential lot review covers urban forestry and stormwater compliance. The scope is limited and those items are clearly defined at the web address that I gave there. They're limited, they're listed in the first paragraph if you go to that website. The townhouse permitting review covers building, zoning, fire, and Charlotte water compliance. And if you go to that website, you'll see that that scope is clearly listed and clearly defined. The residential lot review states that these can be submitted and reviewed prior to or concurrently with townhouse permitting reviews at the developer's discretion. And that the townhouse review encourages early preliminary reviews. Therefore, the order and timing of each review is completely under the developer's control. Any decision to move ahead with building design without approval from both reviews is at the developer's risk. In addition, the request is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. And I've got the Exhibit A here, which is the existing character. The UDO states the neighborhood 1 zoning districts respect the character and development patterns of Charlotte's established residential neighborhoods and promote new residential neighborhood development in a manner that implements the city's vision for the future. The developer's proposal ignores protective UDO zoning requirements of the district, and as a result, does not respect the character and development pattern of our established neighborhood. If I could have the next, oh, sorry.
What you do is just take the mouse and you click on
Oh,
the
it'll
next.
just be this next one.
You choose the,
Oh, okay.
you choose the tab. You want to do this one here?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is my Exhibit B, which is basically taking their variance request and overlaying it to show what the true context is. So this exhibit demonstrates a 300% plus increase in driveway parking width to allow 3 two-car garage doors to dominate the facade within a 62-foot frontage lot, which is not in character. Parking 16 vehicles for 3 units, 10 of which are in the established setback, is not in character. Employing shrubs to attempt to mask these UDO violations is no substitute, and providing private open space behind the triplex to attempt to offset these UDO violations is no substitute. In summation, I do not believe the developer has met the hardship criteria, nor are his requests consistent with the spirit of the UDO. I ask that you deny both variance requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Board, we have any questions for Mr. Pearson?
I would just start with the last one.
Okay, just give us a minute.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Mr. Pearson, how do you, as an architect, an experienced architect with multifamily infill, how would you deal with the odd shape of this lot?
Well, the majority of the lot is to the rear, and that's where I would put the parking. I would use the driveway constraints that are as written in the UDO, which would really, if they followed the rules, would mean the parking needs to go in the back because of the shape of the lot. And they knew the shape of the lot when they bought it.
So, but as far as the UDO is concerned, there is the exception that they're asking for is that since the lot is an odd shape, they can't do that and keep a triplex. And are you suggesting that if they put the parking in the back, that building needs to shrink?
I would say that there is nothing in the UDO that says that their building has to be shaped like that and placed right there.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Pearson. We appreciate your input. Mr. Murray, you have any rebuttal to the testimony that Mr. Pearson just presented?
Just a quick commentary in the UDO, it does say that you have to have fronting to right of way as far as the front facades of the building, so they do have the front, a right of way, conduct space, things like that. There's terminology for that.
Yeah, if we changed, the configuration of the building and rotated it or anything like that, I mean, then you're changing your setbacks and everything. And then it completely, again, it's is gonna be adjusting the setbacks and constraining it even further.
Yeah, you couldn't turn them sideways and face them north as an example and drive into it, they have to have fixed.
Right, yeah, if this building was rotated differently, then you've got your rear setback is now coming from this side and or this side, further shrinking this front here. And then again, it completely changes the character as well, because you've got a cell in here, so you want some kind of frontage along cell.
Just a point of clarity on that, the setbacks for N1A and a triplex do not change based on the building orientation. Mr. Saganin is correct in that the sidewalls have to be perpendicular to the street, and you have to have at least a door that faces out towards the street.
The other thing is just to make sure our focus is still on the shape of the lot, because that's what brought us here with the narrow shape. If you did turn it sideways, you're still gonna have a width problem with your driveway. If your driveway comes in and then you're bringing it over, it still is a width issue because you're so tight and so limited on your width at the front. And that's where the issues come up.
And it's a width issue because
of how narrow it is at the front. If this was a rectangle, you could put 3 driveways in and fill that whole front.
But you need a two-way driveway.
You really need to be able to have some flow to be able to maneuver.
60 feet, which a garage door is either 60 or 80 feet.
Oh, looking at that diagram, that's an awful lot of cars that you could park in there. I mean, when you said 2-car garage, but right, if you have visitors, they can park in your driveway. Providing that the people who bought the house actually use their garage for parking cars, which a lot of people don't. But that's an awful lot of cars.
Sure, that's in practice. I mean, I would say the same thing. If we stacked cars down this driveway in front of this detached garage, I think.
There wouldn't be 16 though.
It'd be really close if we drew them. I mean, I'm just saying the practicality that it's a shot in all factor to see them. But I mean, why would it be parked like that on a daily basis? These are executive level townhomes with people that are using their garages. We've built similar products before. It's not an over parking. What we're doing is giving relief to if you do have a visitor and there's one car that's already out of place to go because you can't park on south. But I would value that. I think from the scope, if you see it, this van's all the way out, all the way wide here. You'd be 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. You'd be 10 cars pretty fast just on one single lot that is already approved use for this lot.
And the idea is not to have vehicles parked in front of the garages, vehicles in the garages, and then space. The other thing I will point out, the trend on Cell One is tear downs and rebuilds. If you go down Cell One, this lot, if it was purchased, you could easily put a duplex on here with an ADU to the rear and have 3 units on this site. That's allowed under the UDO. If you were renting, let's say you lived on one side, you rented one side and you put an ADU, and then you would have tons of parking for 3 units on the property next door. So if we're looking at trends, we have to look at the highest and best use under the UDO, and the adjacent property could support that. So this whole area is going to have more density.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, board, for rebuttal from Mr. Murray?
Mr. Murray, based on this picture right here, can you point out where the shrubs and the brick wall would be?
Yeah, the brick wall, this picture is, I don't know how to identify this. This would be the drawing with the cars parked on it. But where that pointer is along kind of where it says Cell One up in the front, then there would be shrubs to the south next to in between the Pearson lot line and our lot line, and then shrubs in front of where all the vehicles would be visible from the right of way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Okay, this concludes the presentation of evidence. The board will now begin deliberation. The board may reopen the hearing to ask clarifying questions if needed. Interested parties are not permitted to address the board during this portion of today's meeting. However, everyone is permitted to remain present and listen quietly to the board's discussion and vote. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preferences of board members. Rather, it is based on the standards and evidence. Board members are encouraged to reference the applicable legal standards and specific evidence in their deliberation. So we will now enter into our deliberations. And I will open.
Madam Chair, can I suggest that we take a 10-minute break?
I would like to do that. So the board will, before our deliberations officially begin, we will take a 10-minute break. So we'll reconvene at approximately 10:30. Thank you very much. are now in deliberations for this case. So I will entertain comments.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's been brought to my and staff's attention that the applicant would like the board to reopen the hearing. They want to make a modification to their request, and it would be best, I would advise that the board consider reopening so they can hear the modification to their request.
All right, the board will reopen the case so that Mr. Murray may present a modification. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
About how minimum parking would be calculated here, and we can eliminate those 4 parking spaces that are shown in the front, which would also eliminate the second variance request, which was the variance to allow surface parking areas other than individual driveways within the established setback. So that would narrow down the focus just to the first variance about the width of the driveway coming across the front. So it, on that site plan that's submitted, the 4 parking spaces that were in the front were the subject of that second variance. And we would be withdrawing that and eliminating those 4 parking spaces to narrow the focus that it's really just the drive aisle in the front is the focus here of this variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
And based on those changes, or proposed change, we do have some modifications that we would want to make, and I can run through one by one to the
Yes.
findings.
Please, would you do that for us? Thank you very much. Thank you.
For the record, I'll go through each one of these one by one. So on the first front page, we'd be taking out variance number 2 related to surface parking areas other than individual driveways within the established setback. And then to the findings, the modifications would start with number 6. And we would remove and a parking area of 4 parking spaces.
Okay, that's under number 6.
Yes. Under number 7, we would just remove the parking area, which is the first part of that sentence about basically the first line of that sentence at the end. And then in number 9, we'd remove and parking areas. That's in the third line of number 9 after the number 24 feet. Remove and parking area there. And then under 15, second line, the parking area, just change parking area to the driveways. And then under 19, 2 changes there. In the first line, we would remove and parking area about 3/4 away down that first line. And then in the third line, change parking of the parking area to of the driveways. And then under conclusions of law, we just need to change zoning ordinance to unified development ordinance. And those are the changes that we would have to our findings.
Madam Chair, if I may, before staff walks away, would it be helpful for the board if I read out the sentences that have been changed with the changes to make sure that everybody is on the same page about how it'll read once the changes have been made?
Sure, that would be fine. Thank you, Ms. Hewitt.
So on number 6, it would read, the approved land development plans show a 24 feet wide driveway connecting to Selwyn Avenue, providing access to 3 individual driveways, period. On number 9, it would read, the hardship results in strict application of the ordinance because the triangular shape of the property resulted in the proposed triplex being located at the rear of the parcel, restricting the ability to place the driveways wider than 24 feet to the side or rear of the building.
Correct.
Number 15, due to the higher intensity of the street classification and the narrowing of right-of-way along the road, the driveway was moved further back from the front of the lot.
Correct.
Number 19, the applicant is mitigating the visual impacts of the driveway with the provision of a 4 feet tall screen wall along Selwyn Ave and the landscape shrubs 5 feet on the center around the front of and sides of the driveways as shown in the proposed revised layout.
Correct. And did you skip 7? There was a change in 7 as well.
There was a change in 7.
Yes.
Yes.
Moving in the parking area.
So it would be the width of the driveway area of the driveway increases to 76 feet at the individual driveways, which is located between the proposed building and the street.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt. Any other information before we do our deliberations? Okay,
So
all right,
the 4 spaces that came out, they were in fact, there you go. That privacy wall, staff asked for to hide those 4 parking spots, correct?
I believe I'm not sure if we requested it, was provided as in their initial submittal. And so we were asking just to be included as a condition of the approved variance. I think there is some benefit to providing screening even without the 4 spaces there, because you still have a very wide area of driveway and individual driveways between the building and the street. So I think it would still provide some screening from a visual standpoint.
Question is whether the spaces that are there or not, that privacy wall is going to hide all those. Yes.
The intent would be the wall and the landscaping combined would help detract visually from any parking that is provided between parking or driveways between the building and the street.
All right. And so is that driveway going to shorten? Am I understanding that correctly, that the driveway is now going to get shortened?
So all they would be doing is removing these 4 spaces. So there'd still need to be, the driveway would still come in off of Selwyn and turn to provide the access to the individual driveways. And so I don't think it would be able to get any shorter because you'd have to allow for these vehicles to be able to turn around.
Yeah, my question was, I think similar, just that, are you still gonna leave the area just for turnaround purposes, or are you gonna repurpose it for landscaping or anything like that? How's that area gonna now be used or designed?
Yeah, just landscape.
Just landscape, okay.
Solomon, so each of the triplex has a 2-car parking driveway. That's not counted into the driveway width, right? Why is that? It is.
yeah, that's what they need.
Yeah, that's why they would still need the first variance, is because the total cumulative width of all the driveways, including individual driveways, can't be more than 24 feet.
Right.
Okay, so these are already counted, okay.
Right. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, the board will now close the hearing part, and we will now go into our deliberations. Okay, comments, Mr. Marshall. Marshall, excuse me.
I'll let y'all go first. I'm still thinking about all this.
Okay, you're so funny. All right, I'll go first. How's that? All right, as we look at the 4 criteria that we have for making this decision, unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance, and I agree with that. It doesn't result from conditions. It does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, as we have seen in many of the exhibits. It doesn't result from actions taken by the applicant as they purchased this property in that condition. And because of Selwyn's inability to park on street, and I thank you for eliminating the 4 parking spaces. It makes my decision much easier. that we don't have that other impervious area. So with the modifications that have been suggested, I am in favor of approving this variance. Any other comments?
I will add, I thought that Mr. Pearson's information was incredibly clear and intelligent, and I agree with it. I think what Mr. Fortune mentioned earlier is that, there half of people are in support of triplexes, half are not. Developers are in support of it, communities are not. But someone is changing, as their attorney said, and it's going to get denser. And I think that's the purpose of the UDO, is to help density. And Sutherland Ave is certainly ripe for it. And as much as I do not think triplexes are a good thing, I really don't think they're a good thing in these neighborhoods. I believe that the difference between the planning, all the staff thought they had this on track. The developers thought they had it on track. There was confusion. And I believe that staff needs that support right now, because it was fact, they all thought they were on the right page. And I think you can understand it, because it's a very confusing topic. So I would also be in favor of supporting the variance because of that reason.
Thank you.
I would add that while I do agree, and again, everything within the UDO is aligned to what's being proposed. As we look at triplexes as a board, I just think that it's something that we must keep at the forefront of our minds, that this is simply a unique situation. This proposed property is very unique in that if we're proposed different proposals for triplexes, looking at the property, if it is something that is more traditional, then to everything Mr. Shea just alluded to, I think really comes in the precedent where we take a look at it. How does it really affect? Can we look at adding parking in the back, et cetera? But again, just for this particular situation, it's very unique in itself, for which I would approve or be for.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Ms. Sun, comments?
I think Mr. Pearson did an incredibly clear job of illustrating how this is a violation of the UDO, and I would agree with him.
Thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Williamson, comments?
I would tend to suggest that the triplexes are accommodated by right if all the conditions are met. The triplexes are accommodated by right if all the conditions are met, and all the conditions are not being met here. And all the conditions are all the conditions. And we try to pick and choose because of the uniqueness of a property, or if it were so unique, then we wouldn't have this issue every month. So I beg to differ with that definition. And I think that the city needs to get their conditions created so that there is clear definition for developers and neighbors and stormwater officials and fire officials, so that we're not creating more stormwater problems down the road with impervious areas in districts that are trying to accommodate both density and non-density. And until that gets contemplated and fixed, I don't think I would approve this.
For clarity, and I just, for my own clarity's sake, this was approved by Land Development, Urban Forestry, and Charlotte Mecklenburg Stormwater, correct?
We're in
Board member,
closed
yeah.
session, so only, but that
Well,
that
I mean,
was the
I'm-
consensus,
That's
correct, on the board.
Okay.
Yes, that's the consensus.
What Mr. Pearson pointed out is that the developer should have known that the Oasis should have been involved. And they did not, but staff was also confused about that. So the developer by right thought he had full rights. And you can argue that if you understood the UDO better, then you shouldn't have been surprised by that. But the fact that staff was surprised by that, that's enough to tip me over the edge.
Members of the board, just want to throw something in there for you all to consider, just based on the commentary that I'm hearing. One thing that may potentially cause confusion is a duplex triplex a by right allowed development, or is it something that is allowed under prescribed conditions? Those are slightly different situations, and if one is the case versus the other, it would be best for staff and or the applicant to have the opportunity to clarify under what portion of the UDO they are operating under and what particular conditions need to be met in order for you to continue to consider this, if that is something that is important for the board.
Well, wouldn't any development be by right under a prescribed condition? You couldn't build a 6-story house because that's a prescribed condition. The height is a prescribed condition. You couldn't build a house that's too wide for this lot because the setbacks are a condition that must be met. So I would venture to say that every development has conditions, and it's only when they go outside of those conditions that they come to this board.
So the only reason I mentioned this is because there are sections, at least previously in the previous zoning ordinance, where it would dictate where there were uses by right. Yes, there might have been conditions attached to it that all of the other requirements must be met, but there were also special uses that were under prescribed conditions. Now, I would venture to ask staff if that same and those same categorizations made their way to the UDO, and if this is something, if that is an issue for this particular case, or if it isn't, or if it's something different. Just to make sure that the board is considering the type of request, not the use, the type of request under the right frame of mind.
Well, my understanding is in Mr. Murray's presentation, he did mention that this was a by right build. So that kind of answers, I think that answers, for me anyway, that answers the question. It's not, it's their land use is by right because of the UDO and the ability to build duplexes and triplexes. And so that's what we have to look at right now. Now, I know everybody's in the process of looking at this and everybody's got a side, and I understand that. But again, we have to look at we as a board are required to look at the 4 standards. Was it an unnecessary hardship? Did it result from conditions peculiar to the property? Was it related to actions taken by the applicant? And is it consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the regulations? And we can have our own opinions about that. I have my opinions about duplexes and triplexes. And I think, growing pains with this UDO, that they're trying to work those out. And we're going to have these hitches and steps and stumbles as we work through this, because you can't anticipate when you do a document that is large as this one, everything that's going to come up. And unfortunately for the developer, and they didn't anticipate that they would have to go through zoning first. So they're trying to clarify that. But again, I bring us back to these 4 purposes and these 4 standards that have to be met. The criteria that we're looking at kind of narrows. But from my perspective, it is a by right build. And Mr. Murray did say that in his presentation. So, if you need further clarification of that, board, I would be glad to reopen the hearing and let them restate that. But that was my understanding in his presentation.
It's by right if the lot can accommodate that use.
Correct. And so the lot could not accommodate the use.
So therefore it's not by right.
Well, yes, it's still by right. They're just asking for a variance. And with the narrowness of the focus, they have taken away the parking pad. So now basically they're just asking for the wider driveway to accommodate two lanes of traffic going in and out, so these the people that have these duplexes and triplexes one can come in and one can come out at the same time, is what I see. They're asking for the driveway variance and not the parking. Well, except for the actual driveway of the home that pulls into the garage. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, everybody take a deep breath. Here we go. Do I hear a motion to approve this variance or to not approve this variance?
Motion to deny the variance.
All right, Ms. Sun has made a motion to deny the variance. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, we'll now take the motion has been made to deny this variance request by Ms. Sun and seconded by Mr. Williamson. We'll now do a roll call vote. Mr. Young? Do you vote to deny or do you vote not to deny? Is that the
Not
way?
to deny, I know,
Okay.
nay to the motion.
Okay, Mr. Young votes nay. Ms. Sun?
Sun, deny the motion.
So you vote to approve. you-
Deny the variance.
Okay.
Yeah,
you
so
vote to
approve the motion.
Okay. Mr. Shea,
Nay.
Mr. Williamson,
Yay.
Dryden, nay. So the variance is approved. by this
Madam
board.
Chair, no,
Yeah.
that what
No.
at this point would mean is that the vote on this motion failed.
Right,
As such, you still have the consideration of whether to approve or deny the variance at this juncture. So any board members that have an additional motion may make another motion at
Thank
this
you.
time.
sorry about that.
I will make a motion to approve.
Yeah,
Okay, Shay makes a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay. All right, now we have a motion to approve. All right, Mr. Young,
Yeah,
Ms. Sun,
So no.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
No.
Dryden, yes. So the motion now is approved. All right, now we need to look at our finding of facts and conclusions of law. And we have the amendments that Ms. Hewitt read. We are abandoning the number 2, the variance to allow surface parking has been rescinded. We made amendments to number 6, number 7, number 9, number 15, number 19, and under conclusions of law in number 4, instead of the intent of the zoning ordinance, it should be the intent of the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. Do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Young, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. I will do a roll call vote. Mr. Young,
Yeah,
Ms. Sun,
So no.
Sun is no. Mr. Shea,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
No.
Dryden, yes. So the finding facts and conclusions of law are approved as amended. Thank you very much for everybody who participated in this hearing. Have a good day. Okay. Moving on. Let me find the. All right, we're now gonna open the evidentiary hearing for variance number 2024-00020 for property located at 8337 Reedy Creek Road. Before we begin, does any board member have a conflict of interest or potential conflict? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kinley. You may begin your presentation.
Thank you. So by a variance request by Hunter's Affordable Bonding Incorporated, represented by Mr. Hunter, who is here in the audience. Located at 8337 Reed Creek Road, and it's owned by Hunter's Affordable Bonding. The variance request is to reduce the rear setback, which in this case is also the front, and I'll show that in a moment. Setback from 22 feet from a 30 feet, which is an 8-foot reduction. Here's a vicinity map of the property. You'll see the lot it's a double frontage, or what we call a through lot. So it has both frontage on I-45 and then Reed Creek Road. Obviously, access is coming from Reed Creek Road in this case here. Property is zoned in 1A, neighborhood 1 zoning district. Across the street, there's institutional zoning, and you can see on the aerial that institutional parcel, at least in the immediate vicinity, is vacant. And then diagonally across, you have a single family home with a pond in the rear, and then vacant land to the this I guess would be the west and the east of the property, 45 to the rear, and then Reed Creek Road. Here's a close-up aerial of the property. Here you can see there are some overhead power lines along the front of the property. You can see the home that was, these were actually moved from another location and placed on this parcel.
Can you show the power lines like this?
They're right here. And you can kind of, it might be hard to make out, but there's 3 or 4 lines that were here are the standards for granting variance. All 4 have to be met. So the unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. Applicant received an approved permit that showed the building permit within the building within the platted setbacks. Hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The site has a buildable lawn below that's large enough to accommodate a residential structure. The parcels range in depth from 131 feet to 117 feet, given approximately 70 to 57 feet and allowed building depth. Hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant, did result from actions. The hardship does not result from actions that were taken by the property owner because in the dwelling was new to the plot. And there's a typo there. Does result from actions taken by the property owner because when the dwelling was moved to the plot, it was not placed in the location according to the approved permit. And the requested variance is not consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance. It would be inconsistent with the applications of the N1A zoning setback, and granting the variance could create precedent for reduced setbacks for specific blocks. Here's a picture of the house on the property and our sign out front. And that concludes our presentation.
When was the home moved on the property?
It was relocated to the property in 2022.
And when was the building permit submitted?
Not sure if we got that on here.
Is there a date on the plot plan? It'll be on the plot. Sorry, yeah, plot plan.
Yeah.
Can't
We
see.
got it cropped up, can pull it up. The date that's on there is March 1st, 2022.
Thank you.
Mr. Kinsley, thank you. Mr. Kinsley, the land to the west narrows down, it narrows down. Mr. Fortune, that is still subdividable, yes, into lots, correct? West and east, we could have lots in the future.
I'm sorry. I said, I doubt that you could subdivide that, or at least the triangle one.
To the
any
west.
To the west, any further down.
The east, we can probably.
Depending on, I would just have to know the size, depending upon.
Attachment. Issue March. March 17th.
The guy's asking for another one for the property right next door. Same thing.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the applicant owns this parcel. They do not own this parcel.
I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Okay, we will. The applicant is here to speak after you
Yes,
finish
they're
this.
here to testify as well.
But
Any other questions for Mr. McKinley?
Yeah, even with the original plan, the home where it was dropped or where it was actually placed, it was off from what we would get from the original plans, correct? It wasn't 45 feet in the back. It's what it is right now. How much feet are in the front of the home? Because it's 27, I think they said now.
74 feet, looks like is what's measured on the survey, the as-built survey.
74 feet, but it's
Yeah,
supposed to be 30.
They're not required to put the building 45 feet back on the plot plan as long as they're within the required setback. So they could have put it further back than what the plot plan showed and still been in compliance with the zoning. Problem is they put it even further back than what was compliant with zoning.
Yeah.
How was it discovered that it was put in the wrong place?
I am not sure they received a violation.
Having a well put in, that survey to come back out.
That's what
When he came out, I noticed that.
What-
it was doing it.
Well, he can speak to that whenever you swear him in. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, so I can swear you in, sir. All right. All right, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to this board and the action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Would you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please?
GUNTR,
And your position, Mr. Hunter?
owner.
Well, you're the owner, okay. So tell me how this came about.
Well, we were concerned about the preservation of the existing trees, the low hanging power lines, and the safety of the curvature that comes into Reed Creek here. They have a tendency of drag racing, speeding on that road. And so I was really concerned about the future tenants who would be in there trying to put it back far enough to try to make sure that wasn't gonna be an issue. And this occurred.
So Mr. Hunter, did you pull a survey for both these lots?
Yes, sir.
Did you put the plot plan, did you put the house footprint on the plot plan that you did, your survey?
As far as we had knew, that was what had been done. Yes, sir.
Did the surveyor pin your corners for you?
Essie Samani, I don't think he did. He must have. Yes, sir.
So he put the corners,
I think that Essie did. I don't recall. It's been a couple of years. I don't remember exactly all the details, but I do know they came, they said that it was marked.
so the surveyor put the pins in the wrong spot?
I don't want to say Essie did. I don't think that Essie did. No, sir.
If you go back to if Mr. Kinsley goes back to the plot plan, not that one, but the yeah, that's it. Those numbers there's nothing there that's correct. Your lot is wider than the 5 feet left, 5 feet right, and the home, right? It's much wider.
Yes.
And the setback is more than 75 plus the home, right? It's 45 to 30. So how did you draw that up? Did you draw that?
I did.
So where did you come up with those numbers? If you didn't have if you had a survey, why did you use those numbers?
I'm not sure, sir. Maybe it was inverted. Maybe I miscalculated. That I'm not 100% certain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Just if you got other presentations, let's finish with Mr. Kinley. And Mr. Kinley, is there anything else that you need to share with us?
No, if you want to take a moment to look over the findings. I'll just run through those quickly. Well, actually, I already did that, didn't I? I did go through those. Sorry. Do y'all have any questions about the findings, I guess I should say?
So, John, is there currently a house? So I wasn't clear what it mean by relocated the dwelling to the property in 2022. They constructed that?
No, they just moved the house.
It was moved. So I don't know where the home existed previously, but they moved it to this location, put in the foundation and placed the home on the foundation.
Oh.
So it wasn't built, but they got an approved building permit and then they placed it. And then that's I guess later is when they were made aware of the issue with the rear setback.
So was the company that moved it that made the mistake?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Kinley? Thank you very much, John.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if we could take a brief recess from the case, we do have the city clerk here that made time to come in so that she could be able to swear in Mr. Cord. It will not take very long.
Certainly. Okay, we'll take a brief 5-minute pause in this hearing. Thank you.
It's mine.
All right.
Okay.
morning.
Good morning.
If you would place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Okay, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Hamilton Court,
Do solemnly and sincerely swear
do solemnly and sincerely swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers
and to the constitutional powers
and authorities
and authorities
which are or may be established
which are and may be established
for the government thereof,
for the government thereof,
and that I will endeavor to support,
and I will endeavor to support,
maintain, and defend
maintain, and defend
the Constitution of said state,
the Constitution of said state,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
to the best of my knowledge
to the
and
best,
ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
as a member of the Unified Development Ordinance
as a member of the Unified Development Ordinance
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Very good.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kelly.
All right.
All right, Mr. Court, you may join us at the table.
Given that there's only 5 members
Okay.
per hearing, if Mr. Young has to leave at any point, then Mr. Court may
Okay,
join
okay.
the
that's fine.
panel at that point.
All right, the meeting will resume. Okay, Mr. Hunter, you've already been sworn in. Is there anything else you would like to share with us? Okay. Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Hunter, other than the ones we've already asked? Okay,
I have a question for Mr. Hunter. How does this issue come about? Did you discover it or what prompted it?
yeah, come in, yeah, talk into the microphone, please, Mr. Hunter.
Yes, ma'am, I discovered the issue.
And you proactively took the
Yes.
action to come to the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. If we didn't approve the variance, what needs to be done?
He would have to relocate the homes, rebuild the foundation, and move the foundation up and then move the structures forward.
Or we have to rezone to a district that
That's
has smaller
Results
yards.
in Smaller rear yard.
Excuse me, yes, all right. We're gonna, any other questions for Mr. Hunter?
No, not for Mr. Hunter, for our team.
Okay, for the staff?
Yes, for clarity's sake, this was placed prior to the UDO. The zoning laws that were at hand prior to this was within compliance.
No.
Not at all, still. That's
Under the old R3, it was so, trust me, we tried to look at both, we tried to solve problems, and we were, either way, if anything, the UDO has helped them out because now it went from 30 to 27. So we give them the benefit of the applicant, the benefit of the UDO.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Hunter or for staff? All right, the board will now go into deliberations. A reminder that you may sit quietly my page. We're just tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preferences of board members, rather is based on the standards of evidence. Right, so we will now go into deliberations. Thank you very much. All right. Comments?
I think we're thinking of this, at least I'm thinking this is all pretty cut and dried. However, this does back up to 45. There's nobody behind him that's going to be affected by this. The only effect would be if more lots go to his east or his west. And we would be setting a precedent for that street that could be bad. But I'm at least thinking that he does back up to 45. And that does give him some allowance here that we should be at least aware of, if you follow me.
I follow you and I'm aware of that, but I'm also looking at our very next variance case, which is the same issue. And looking at the overhead, I can see why you didn't want to cut down the pine tree. I don't know. But the plot plan that he submitted worries me. That as you alluded to, Mr. Shea, I don't know where Mr. Hunter got his numbers. And who he showed it to, who he asked to review it. I mean, all four of the questions, the hardship does result from the applicant. He put the house in the wrong place. And it's not peculiar to the property because he had plenty of room. I understand the power lines and I understand his other concerns, but
I don't disagree. I'm just saying.
I understand it does back up to 45, and yes, because but I guess my conundrum is we make the rules and we say these are the rules. And then this board entertains every month, everybody coming and saying, but I want to change the rule. And I don't know where I draw the line. Where do we say, no, we can't do this anymore. We can't keep saying, yes, you have an exception to this rule if this is the rule. I mean, I know there's things we need to work out, but I just don't.
We're not changing, just to be clear,
we
we're
draw
not
the
changing the
line?
rules.
I know, we're not changing the rules.
We
We're
give
just,
exceptions, so.
all right, Mr. Young, you have comments?
No, I'm just,
Mulling.
yeah, Marlon, like you said, where do we draw the line? But Mr. Shea's point is unique because, to his point, it going against 485, who's going to be impacted? And I hear you, the next variance is the exact same issue. That's the problem. Solomon's point, there's going to be no more development on the other side of the property, but there's a chance there could be development on that side of the property.
I don't want to say it can't be developed.
Yeah, I like that.
I think the spirit of a variance is how that variance impacts the other properties in future, in setting precedents. I think what Kevin's saying is that the fact that 485 is here, that sort of makes it feel like this variance is acceptable. Because nobody's impacted. As a precedent, it could impact somebody in the future, but those lots would have to come on a case by case basis, right? And I don't think this one, I think the harm to other neighbors, if we granted this variance, it doesn't exist.
Well, the property at least on this map, the property to the right is owned by someone else. And theoretically, they could come to us by saying, oh, well, we wanted it back, so back off the property and say the same thing. It backs up 485, so why can't I have 4 feet or 5 feet? Now, the property to the right of that, it's that small, narrow little, I mean, we've approved variances on quirkier pieces of land just recently. P.S.
10 minutes ago.
So,
in that variance had an impact on a neighbor, multiple neighbors, where this one
Right now, it
have less
doesn't.
impact on neighbors. But if the neighbor to the right, for example, wanted to come and seek a variance for 3 feet or 2 feet, I wouldn't have a problem giving that one to him either because he's got 485 behind.
Yeah, we just approved a variance of 52 feet and it's impacting the others. And this
But
one,
that has nothing to do with, I mean, yeah, but we can't compare apples to oranges. And we have to look at this variance here.
And I think what you're saying is that in effect, by trying not to compare apples to oranges, you are in fact comparing apples to oranges.
I just don't want to put staff in a bad spot. This, we set this precedent.
That's what I'm worried about.
I
Because it won't just be this property. And yes, right now it backs up to 485, so we're all saying, well, that's okay. But what if the next property that asks for this doesn't back up an interstate highway?
Well, then we have different restrictions.
If this happens there were 4 lots to the east of this get approved, that get subdivided and plotted, and they do the same thing, they come to us, I'd lean towards approving it. I mean, they're on, why do you want to be closer to 45? I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but there's no damage, there's no harm to anybody else in the neighborhood. So I worry about putting staff in a bad spot, but I also think that there are some other factors here that benefit the owner.
yeah, and strict application of the variance will request him to move both houses, redo the foundations. And
That's a hardship.
It's a hardship, but it's a hardship introduced by himself. I mean, so it comes down really to, are we gonna follow the rule exactly and hold him to that and make him rebuild the foundations and move the houses? Or do we feel like the precedent here would not do future damage and Mr. Hunter is okay? I think that's what it comes down to.
And just to clarify for members of the board, 2 points. The first one is you're not a precedent setting board. You look at each and every case for its very own facts. Now, in the very rare circumstances where you have 2 almost identical set of circumstances, then the law would dictate that similar outcomes would happen. But that generally is rare, few and far in between. More often than not, you're looking at different properties with different circumstances each. That would be one point to make. The other point to make is that the law requires that an applicant show all of the factors, all of the 4 factors of the variance before a variance is granted. So just want to caution the board to keep that in mind, that if there isn't a showing that the requirements are met, there is a particular dictate that the law requires you to do.
So that answers the question. The law is very clear. It's his own fault. That means the variance is denied, from what I just heard from you.
That would be for the board to determine, but again, the applicant has to make that showing and you have to make that finding.
May I ask a question, since I'll be on maybe the next case? I might need some things to clarify before we go into that. No.
Yep. All right, we'll open it for a vote. Do I hear a motion to approve or disapprove this variance?
I make a motion to approve.
Mr. Young makes a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
1 second.
Soon second. All right. So now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Young voting to approve this.
Yeah.
Ms. Sun,
Son, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
No.
Dryden is no. But the variance is approved. All right, so then we have to change the finding of facts. A lot. Okay, we start with number 11. The hardship does result in the application of the ordinance because the applicant received an approved permit.
No, that's correct. The hardship does not result in strict application of the ordinance. Because it did show within the plat.
Okay,
That's correct.
is that correct? Okay. All right, what about number 12?
Madam Chair, if you could say one more time what the modification to 11 is going to be?
Nothing. They said the hardship does not result in strict application of the ordinance. But that doesn't make sense because we're approving, I mean, this,
This is saying 11 is showing that if he had followed the plat, then would have no effect. So that's correct. There was no result from what he did. What he's applied for is correct.
As these findings of fact and conclusions of law read, currently, they would support denying the variance. However, the board has voted to approve the variance.
So we have to change
As
it.
such, at the very least, starting with number 11.
Right.
For the folks, for the board entirely, but at least for the folks that voted to approve the variance, as you discuss what the changes are going to be made, I would suggest that you lean on those yes votes to provide you with the reasoning and the written reasons as to the changes that you're going to make to have these findings of fact and conclusions of law be consistent with your ruling.
That's why I asked you for that drawing right there.
This drawing specific, like a printed copy of that drawing?
It's fine, I can utilize.
Would
Fine, I can
staff be
utilize it.
able to zoom in? Would zooming in be helpful for the board?
It would be because this drawing relative to the case is a lot clearer in understanding the property than this.
But that's what the applicant sent in. That's what you had. I mean, that's what they approved was what he put there.
That's what they approved. I want to see what the property looks like. Yeah, you can leave it right there. You don't have to zoom in. Yeah, it's 30 feet, it's 90 feet.
We have to change 11. Because if they voted to approve, they're saying that the hardship does result in the strict application of the ordinance.
Then we need to nuke
Right,
that show the building within the platted setbacks.
right. Is that right? Mr. Kinley, are you working on this or should we just continue to muddle through?
I am working a lot of like.
Okay,
So yes,
well, just let it, you just work on it. We'll, I mean,
strike out the end of 11 after the building permit number.
okay, okay, that sounds,
Strike out the word not.
right.
And again, just to clarify, I would really encourage the board member, especially the board members that voted yes to grant the variance, to provide some insight or some proposed language for the aspects that need to change for this,
Right, so-
as well as working in tandem with staff.
So Ms. Sun and Mr. Williamson, let's think of some things that
Did we say in either 15 or granting variance?
Would not create a precedent. Number 15, granting the variance could not create a precedent because this is not a precedent-setting board.
There you go.
If anything, I would suggest eliminating 15
Yeah,
altogether.
altogether, that's what I would say, because we're in a,
Can we add one that says the board grants this variance because of the proximity to 485? Because I think that has some.
Well, that would be number 12. Go look at number 12 and add it in there. Something about its proximity to 485. When, if you're gonna, if that's gonna be your argument.
It has a buildable envelope large enough to accommodate residential structure.
So the hardship does result from its proximity to 45.
Board Member Shea, could you restate that? I believe what you said probably will be sufficient, and I think it was something along the lines of the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property because of its close proximity to 485.
That's correct.
Yes. And then we'll just period there and eliminate all the rest of it.
About 13, does 13 have to be
13,
modified?
yeah, hardship does not result. I mean, basically, you're saying that. Because they all have to agree. Either they all have to say they all do or they all don't. So you people that voted yes need to rework this to say why it's not a hardship, why it doesn't.
I mean, we've already established it's unique because it's right there against 485. We insert that language, and I'm looking at the conclusion of law. I will go against number 4 as well because I don't think there is anything against public safety or security. I think if anything, it secures it because it's trying to protect the whoever lives in these quarters.
Right.
Being against 45 and from what was argued,
But we're
the
looking at,
speeding.
yeah, we're looking at 13. Go back up and look at 13 though, Mr. Young, and let's work with that one.
I know, but I mean, we just include, okay, go back to 12. What do we want to?
12 just says the hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property because of the close proximity to 485, I-485.
But that is only one
One.
variance factor that
Right.
you guys have
Right.
turned around. You still need the other 3, starting with 11 as well as 13 and 14. Before you get to the conclusions of law, because changing the conclusions of law is gonna be easy. That's where you potentially would strike the not the yeses, where you need the factual basis is going to be in your findings of fact. So when you look at number 11, and the members that voted yes said there was a hardship due to the strict application of the ordinance, what is the hardship that you found from the evidence you received?
Hardship does not.
You're saying we should be less strict in the application of the ordinance.
I don't think I'm not in favor of putting that in the conclusions of law.
485.
Were there any other facts that you heard in the presentation that led you to believe that not granting this variance would create a hardship? And if so, what were those facts?
Also,
And it doesn't have to be necessarily the 485 piece, because the 485 piece goes to the peculiarity, at least as I'm hearing it from you, goes to the peculiarity of the property. So what other facts?
also the fact there would be no devaluation in the quality of life to the surrounding neighbors.
That would probably go towards the spirit and intent of the ordinance in number 14,
Right.
potentially. I'll look at it. I'll look at it.
The requested variance. So number 14 would read the requested variance
He moved it there to avoid the
is consistent with the spirit of purpose. So take out the word not.
But can you say because it would be inconsistent with the application of setbacks for N1A zoning?
To change that. What's the variance? You would just put a period after ordinance. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, period.
Yeah.
Apologies, I missed the last part. Are we on 13 or 14?
They were
14?
talking about
And-
14, saying that should read the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, period.
Because
Well, that's what I'm asking them, because why?
you have to provide
we
the
alluded to
factual.
You have to give a reason.
Well, we alluded to the fact that it will have no devaluation to the quality of life for the surrounding neighbors. And when that was alluded to, it was suggested that that would be inserted into number 14. So I
Okay.
would propose that the intent of the ordinance, because there is no devaluation to the quality of life of the surrounding neighbors.
So it would read, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit and spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance because the granted variance would not devaluate.
Quality of life for surrounding neighbors.
Would not devaluate the quality
Of life.
of life of the surrounding neighbors.
Yes, ma'am.
We still need to come back to 13, though. We did not finish that one. Because in reality, the hardship does result from actions taken by the applicant because he put the house there. So how do we get around that one if you're gonna approve this variance? That's my question to 3, and you can't put in there, it's because, oh, it's gonna cost him a lot of money. We can't consider what the ramifications of our decisions is when we make this decision.
Nor can we consider an error in business practices by the surveyor.
No,
Okay.
because he gave us no proof of that. He said, I think, maybe, I don't remember, I don't know. So you can't, that's not a finding of, that's not actionable evidence. Now, if you had the surveyor here and he wanted to testify, but we have no evidence, it's almost considered hearsay, and we can consider it, but it can't be.
Well, I only consider that because the house was placed at 30 feet as opposed to 45, so I don't know if that was on him or the surveyor
That's what
person
I'm
that
saying,
placed
but we
it, but I
can't-
get what you're saying.
But as a true fact, we can't consider that because it wasn't given to us in evidence.
Nicole, does every single one have to be?
Yes.
Yes, the law requires that all 4 variance factors are met for a variance to be granted, which means that your findings of fact and conclusions of law have to read with the required factual basis to say the applicant met each of these. And so on 13,
It's problematic.
Now, under the current UDO, Solomon stated that it actually benefits the property owner. I want clarity, a little bit more clarity in how it benefits the property owner. So I understand it shortens it, but it was listed at 45 feet. It was given 30. We're trying to reduce it to 22.
The new setback is 27 feet. So instead of an 8-foot variance, we're really, under the new ordinance, we're giving him a 5-foot variance. So he gets 3 feet.
Can we take out line 13?
No.
You have to provide a factual basis for whether or not the actions were, whether or not the unnecessary hardship was as a result of the applicant's actions. Your findings would be incomplete if it didn't include some finding of fact
Well, I
to
don't
that
think
effect.
the hardship, it still results from the actions taken by the property owner. However, we're giving him a variance to forgive that.
But
that's what we're saying, is that.
But that's not how, I know what you're saying, but that's not how these, if we say, yes, we approve this, then everything in this finding of facts has to say why we approve it. And saying that the hardship was resulting from actions taken by the applicant doesn't prove that we should give him the variance. That actions taken by the applicant means that he did something he shouldn't have done, and we should not have approved the variance.
He's saying that the reason he needs a variance is because of the mistake.
Were there any additional facts other than the mistake from the surveyor that you heard in your facts in the presentation? I believe the applicant alluded to power lines and trees.
That's what I was gonna say, the street racing as well as the power lines were the reason for it being pushed back further.
But the street racing, we can't, that's basically hearsay, because we had no one here to give factual evidence that there is street racing. I'm not saying there isn't, but again, come back to factual, we have to consider factual evidence presented here, not hearsay.
Can I pull in the CMPD officer from right there? I'm being facetious.
But there's nobody
I'm
here,
being
though.
facetious.
I mean, now,
it is.
the power lines, yes, we have physical evidence of the power lines, yes.
Would that, so if it, would it be as a suggestion to the board for the members that voted to approve the variance, could number 13 potentially read as the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner because the current position of the property avoids overhead power lines and existing trees along adjacent right-of-ways.
You're comfortable with that?
Spelling,
I mean,
spelling out the location, yeah, I'm with that. The location of the home prevents a safety hazard to those within the dwelling.
Is that sufficient for the board members that voted yes? Is that consistent with the evidence that you received?
Yes.
Yes.
all right, so the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner due to positioning of overhead power lines and
Existing
current
trees?
tree locations on the lot.
The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner because when the dwelling was moved to the lot, it was placed in a location to prevent a safety hazard in lieu of the location of power lines and trees.
No.
I mean,
I think we need to stick with due to the positioning of power, due to the placement, position of, or placement of power lines and trees on the property. Is that?
I'm good with that.
That works for
Is
the rest
that-
of the board members?
Is that what you're saying?
Away from existing power lines?
If you want to say that? Due to the, so how do you want to word it, Mr. Williams?
Away from, in front of what you said originally. So move to, the placement occurred
Due to positioning
Away from.
away from,
of the home, away from
Power lines and existing.
positioning away from existing power lines and trees on the property. Okay, so let me read this again. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner due to the positioning, due to the position, that doesn't make sense. Oh, the position away from, due to the positioning away from existing power lines and trees on the property.
Due to the structure's positioning,
Due to the structural
structures,
okay,
structure's position away from.
okay, thank you. I've gotten there eventually. Okay. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner due to the structures positioned away from existing power lines and trees on the property. Okay, you, yes, people that.
See,
Happy
yes.
with that? All right, then we got move to conclusions of law. So unnecessary hardships.
Madam Chair, we still have 11 to contend with. I
thought
don't
we-
believe
thought we
number
fixed
11
that.
was fixed.
Can we fix that? The hardship does result in strict, the hardship would result
Does result from strict application.
from the result from strict application of the ordinance because the applicant received an approved permit, period.
Okay.
Is that all right? That's what the yes people wanted to put there.
As long as that's consistent with
Yes,
the reasoning behind the yes votes, that should be sufficient.
Is that?
it was.
Okay, under conclusions of law, so we're gonna strike the word not, unnecessary hardships would result. The hardship does result. The hardship
Does not.
does not. And then the requested variance is consistent. Okay? Do I need to reread those or is everybody, okay, we're good? All right, do I have a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law as amended? Mr. Shea, thank you. Do I hear a second?
second.
Mr. Williamson. All right, Mr. Young,
Yay.
Sun, Mr. Shea,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Dryden, yes. So the finding of facts and conclusions of law are approved. Thank you.
I think we were totally messed things up if I jumped on here, don't you?
Unless Mr. Young has to leave, otherwise, I mean, if you guys want to switch, that is up to you.
Right.
Man, shit, that was good.
Might as well keep it consistent.
All right, we're going to take a brief
Unless it
recess
be the
for
same.
10 minutes and then we'll come back and conclude this business.
You have one more case left.
I know.
Okay.
Go.
This is exactly the same.
Yeah, it's the
Come
same
back
thing.
at 12:10. I mean, 12:10. Yes, 12:10.
For a way we can take that 75 years of work you just did and say, get up.
Because the exec,
Because they were separated into different cases, you'll have to hear the cases, the same case again. It would be up to staff to condense or present in whatever
But
format
we
they
already
choose.
have that.
It would be a very brief presentation.
Yeah, we have to have another one. Okay, all right. A couple minutes. Yeah,
You okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Sorry you had to search it out so long.
No, good. Yeah, let's take.
Yeah, that's what I am.
Progress, just the last thing.
Huh?
10-minute recess?
10-minute recess.
Excuse me?
You said 10-minute recess.
Yeah, you said 10-minute recess. Yes, yes, I did say that.
When you guys, I wrote down everything so that you can send me the.
Thank you so much.
Hey, guys, let's get on.
Not about this, but about yesterday with the ACRB, or we're gonna, do you guys need any? Fellows, are we gonna be meeting again, or are you guys gonna wait until zoning, the zoning committee? He's like, you're gonna see me, you're not getting rid of me?
Exactly, I was gonna say, next thing you'll do is make them smile, man.
Listen, I let my face dry because I started reading and I forgot that I was on camera, so I went into like analyzing mode and my face probably went from.
Well, I think it was like someone just like, someone was in the early 70s, 80s, Native American.
Yeah. Oh my God, you guys.
I'm in this meeting.
It really wasn't a Native American at all.
I don't even know. I couldn't do that. Exactly, back in the 70s now.
Like it wasn't, like, we're gonna play opposite was.
Yeah. My governor cares about me, gave me give a hoot no blue.
Oh, we remember all those though.
Yes, we do.
They don't have catchy stuff like that.
No, we don't. Yeah, so,
I was gonna say, if you guys want me to, I turn that out, the copy and start looking at it, but like, for consistency's sake, like, words and terms, but if that's something that Laura's team is gonna do, I'm not gonna.
I think that they would appreciate you.
There you go.
Amazing work. I don't think we should be working on, like, we should be
Yeah.
working on the
Okay.
same document, so.
Okay.
Maybe there's a way to work on it or something.
right.
I printed it out because I wanted to read it paper, but I'll put whatever commentary to the draft that everybody.
Yeah, we went to the restroom again.
Quickly just, Kristen just sent me, those procedures, me and John can go over it and how we get that. We know that's. Because from that.
Okay, I'll keep looking through it and make some suggestions about some of the wording.
Yeah, if you can do that, that would be great.
Okay.
So it's just a land development guy just need to say it again. And the reality is if 40 people start saying, hey, we got this, we see, we read this language, we got this problem, then I can get it because John's gonna mention it. And so I think we're gonna see. I think, hey,
I know this is not, well, I guess it's hard on my end because if Jill and I take this over and these are gonna be our new clients, but have they considered what the composition of the board is gonna look like? Are they just basically gonna roll people over that are already there, or?
We can't roll over because.
Well, not roll over, but like appoint them to the new board.
No,
Okay.
because, well, I think there's, what we're gonna do on the board is we want one member.
Okay.
Because his wife is.
He has a conflict of interest.
That's correct.
He has a conflict of interest that will prevent him from being fair and impartial.
Well, from hearing every case since his
Okay, cool.
wife is.
Okay, cool.
So we're
I
trying.
am gonna need to sit down with you guys to tell me exactly what this word is, because even when you explained the other week, I was still like, I have no idea what these people are doing, I don't know what this looks like in action. Is there anything, like, are there meeting streams? Where there are meeting streams that I could find and look at what they used to, even though I know what they're gonna do now is very different.
Gary, what's your business?
Esoteric press.
I mean, it's more like,
It's a small business.
Oh, and
Understand how to
for-
grow, the capacities. Yeah, really how you infiltrate into operations. I used to write numbers and we don't have.
No, I know, you
I
don't,
used
you
to
don't
work
have,
back here.
but I mean, honestly,
Nationwide, I work with all of our external partners. And you know, Wakefield, just to make America, account and all the different civil things like that, make sure we have diversity.
Oh, Cushman and Wakefield. Oh.
Feelings, strong feelings.
We help different companies.
Okay.
Understand their place. We'll get on it and then get into what's interesting.
Are you a for-profit or non-profit?
For-profit.
I see.
Rewarding work. I always say, everything I'm doing, you know, is been bigger than me. So like, if my success is predicated on other people's success.
Yeah, nice.
Like, if you're doing well, then
Is it
I'm
actually
doing well.
translating in their brain to be like, hey, here's what these people are gonna do,
How long
this
you
is
been
what
in
it
real
looks
estate?
like, it's that time.
10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
You pick the perfect time.
I couldn't have been born early. I wish I was born early.
You say a little early.
Because I started right after college and that was 2012.
I wish there was some other. I wish there was more. I started with sports agency straight out of college. Sports agency, I'm certified.
Oh, so what do you do for sports agency?
So
Okay.
I represent athletes through contract negotiations.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
I
Yeah.
have players overseas, I was certified with the NBA. Yeah.
We're ready to resume the meeting, and we will now hear case variance number 2024-0021 for a property located at 8341 Reedy Creek Road. Mr. McKinley. Mr. Kinley, I'm sorry.
All right, 2024-021, Hunter's Affordable Bonding Inc., represented by Elias Hunter, who's in the audience, for property located at 8341 Reedy Creek Road. Parcel is owned by Hunter's Affordable Bonding Inc., and the variance request is to reduce the rear setback, which is also the front in this case, from to 22 feet from the 30 feet, which is an 8-foot reduction. The parcel is next door to the one that you just heard, and it is on Reedy Creek Road with 485 in the rear. So this is a through lot with frontage on both Reedy Creek and I-45. And the UDO basically says that when you're a double frontage lot, both frontages are considered front setbacks. Here's the parcel with the aerial and the zoning. It's in 1A zoning. Which under the old ordinance was a 30-foot on the front and 30-foot for the other frontage, and which is reflected on the plat. Under the UDO, that's 27 feet now. Across the street is institutional CD zoning, And you have a vacant property to the west and a property to the east with a single family home on it. Here's a zoomed out aerial showing the context of the area. And let's just repeat. And here is the bird's eye image just showing the location of the parcel. Again, there's overhead utility lines along the front of the parcel along Reedy Creek Road with some existing trees. The home is set back beyond those trees, closer to the I-45 frontage. Requesting a UDO ordinance variance to reduce that rear setback from 22 feet to 30 feet, from 30 feet to 22 feet, which is an 8-foot reduction. And this is the survey showing the setbacks if the UDO was applicable here. Again, those are platted setbacks are recorded showing 30 feet. But under the UDO, it would be a 27-foot setback. And they're at 22.21 feet for this lot at the nearest point. And so there's an encroachment of a few feet there at the rear corner of the building. Here's the recorded plat that just shows the 30-foot setbacks as they are recorded with the deeds, and that just reflects the old zoning code requirements. And they got a approved plot plan for this one that shows a 30-foot setback off the front, 10-foot setback off of the side, 27 feet off of the other side, and then 45 feet off of the rear, which would be the 45 frontage. There's a standards for granting the variance. All four have to be met, and I'll give you a minute to look over the staff's findings of fact, and you might want to consider all of those as they are currently written, and I'll go through them whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So the unnecessary hardship would not result from this strict application of the ordinance. The applicant received an approved permit that showed a building within the platted setbacks. Hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The site has a building envelope that's large enough to accommodate the residential structure. The parcel ranges from 117 feet to 102 feet in depth, which gives approximately 57 to 42 feet in building depth. Hardship did result from actions taken by the applicant when the building was moved to the lot. It was placed in a location according to the approved permit, and the requested variance is not consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance. It would be inconsistent with the application of the setbacks for N1A zoning. And we do have concerns that it could lead to future requests for setbacks, reducing setbacks on through lots. Here's a picture showing the house on the property. Again, setback towards 45, and the sign, our notification sign out front. That concludes my presentation. And the applicant is here if he wants to make a presentation for this one as well.
Any questions for staff?
I would just want to point to the board that even though the previous case that you heard had some similar factual background and similar circumstances, this case is different. As such, your findings in the future, your vote in the future will be based on whatever evidence is received in this particular hearing. So I would encourage the board to ask all of the necessary questions to ensure that the facts are put on the record for this particular case, this particular property.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, Mr. Hunter, you had comments. You've already been sworn in. You have no comments? Let's go back to staff. Is the time frame approximately the same? Where
when was this house moved to this lot?
Yes, the timing is the same, 2022.
2022, and the plot plan was submitted in March of 2022 also?
Yes.
I don't see them here. Do the power lines run across this property as well?
They do, you can see them in the first
Okay.
side.
Property abuts 485 as well.
Correct.
Based on this picture, are there more trees in the front of this property as opposed to the one beside it?
Yeah, so based on this picture, the driveway it's a little bit skewed because the lines and matching it up to the aerial, but there's my laser pointer. So the driveway for this lot is here, and you do have a few more trees. I think you can kind of see those in the street view as well.
Yeah, there.
There's a cluster of a few pine trees there in the front yard. Looks like 4, that's what I count.
Mhm.
Would those be considered heritage trees?
Oh, no, they're not wide, they're not, they're not big enough around. Heritage trees have to have something 20, a big diameter in order to be considered heritage tree.
Those I don't believe, we would have to measure them, so we have no way to verify for certain, but just by eyeballing it, I would say no, but yeah, we're not urban foresters, so we don't have someone here to speak exactly to that point.
Correct.
What is the size qualification? Is it 16 inches? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
So,
Yeah,
30?
yeah, for a heritage tree, yeah, they have to be really big, yeah. Okay. And I have a question for Mr. Hunter. Mr. Hunter, you evidently you had the same concrete person lay the plots, thank you for this.
Yes, ma'am.
And you had the same surveyor do both surveys?
Yes, ma'am.
So my question to you is, in your opinion, how did this occur?
I think it was the mover, the guy who actually moved Lane Moving Service. I think that it was the actual mover that had the problem that occurred.
But if you already had the concrete pad poured, then he just set the house on where the concrete pad was.
Well, yes, he would have said it where it was at.
So when who poured the concrete pad? The same movers?
The same, yes, ma'am.
And did you show him the plot plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a reason given by the movers as to why it was placed exactly where it was?
We had that conversation. He swore that he had abided by everything. We showed him that wasn't the case.
So if you want to move it to the correct place, does that mean you have to cut down any of the trees?
I don't think so. I can't say, I hadn't looked at that aspect of it. I don't think so, not from where I think the trees are at.
So,
No, you fine.
so this was completely a mistake of the mover who poured the concrete incorrectly?
They done the footings and whatnot. Well, just like he put it just in the wrong place, not where the dimensions had stated for it to be. Lee McQuarrie has been moving houses around North Carolina for quite some time, actually done several things for the city and for the state. And so I was very confident in his abilities and his staff.
When you found out about this mistake, did you talk to the mover and what was his or her response?
That he had followed the specs, and we went over being ASE with him about the specs and the drawings, so.
What brought notice to the incorrect location?
Needing to get the well and the septic done, and them needing to, readdress the survey, and me and ASE going back over it, and him saying this is not in the right place. Then I reached out to Mr. Solomon's NIM office to try to sit down and try to figure out what the next step would be in this process, which brings me here.
Solomon, for my general knowledge, what zoning would allow that setback?
Yeah, M1E.
In N1E.
N1E. N1E.
How is that different from N1A?
Setbacks less.
It's different setbacks. Think of it like R3 and the previous
Oh,
ordinance was R3, when we went to R6, it was just now it's all residential, but now you had different setbacks in rear yards and lot sizes.
So I guess since this is a double frontage lot, they could actually get it within N1C, because it would be 17 foot measured from the right of way. For N1C.
That was my question.
And N1A is 27 feet.
Okay, yeah, so we.
Okay. Mr. Hunter, I'm really sorry for this problem. You put us in a really bad place. We've approved the first one, which almost causes us to have to enforce this one because it's like a mirror image. I would strongly suggest that you be a little more hands-on if you do this ever again.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Because it's very problematic for me on this board because, I mean, I know we danced around the hardship, but this results because of what you did, what your people did on this lot. It's not topographical, it's not anything. And we're trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, but this was basically your problem and the foundation. I don't like being put in this position, but do you have any other questions or comments before we go into deliberation?
John, I have a question. So if he didn't discover this, after how many years would this get grandfathered in?
It's a good question.
It would be a non-conforming structure.
So technically it would be non-conforming because what would happen is it would be.
Right.
Sorry, it would be, it's an illegal permit, so think of it as, it wasn't built properly, so it's like typically what the code says is if you build something, not following your permits, you don't get grandfathered in because.
Oh, I did not know that.
So
You don't follow the permit, you do not get grandfathered.
I mean, you've come in here in past, there's been some arguments, people saying, did code? No. But I've also told people, I have to be very careful with that because what I start telling people is, do we want code sticking your head up over everybody's fence in everybody's neighborhood?
Right.
And then so also, even if code goes away, there's still this clarity about when you go to sell the homes, it's gonna pop up
Right,
again.
right.
And staff is gonna go and say, well, wait a minute, we had these permits that got pulled. And so the next property owner is gonna be putting this, we're gonna say, hey, well, you gotta go get a variance to clarify it. So even if we don't cite you, it's still gonna be, this just doesn't go away because title research. So it's kind of,
Yeah, we,
I hate to say it, somehow you're gonna get pinched by someone. Is it us or,
Yeah.
or is it the title insurance company?
But you said something too, Solomon. You said with Coden being there, and you said peeping over the fence, looking the neighbors to assume. And I think that's one of the things that was unique in our ruling in this situation is there is no impact or effect to neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to say right now that is they're correct, because again, it's, you can tell that obviously Mr. Hunter owns the 2 lots, and then the lot next to that's still vacant, and then it appears that other homeowner hasn't.
When we look at things that are done illegally, so for example, somebody had a house that was built in, 1920 before zoning existed, and they, it's not in compliant with the zoning regulations, then that would be legal, what we consider grandfather or legal nonconforming, because it existed prior to the zoning regulations being established. In this case, the zoning regulations were established and it was done illegally, so it's technically not going to be grandfathered in.
we've had cases before where
Yeah.
somebody goes to sell it and they go, oh, that is over the setback line, and they need a variance in order to get clear title, right?
And we have in the past, approved that things that were built in the 1940s and, yes, we have made accommodations for those. To me, this is a little different because this is current, present day. It's like, don't ask permission, beg for forgiveness. And I think that's what we're doing right now. We're approving. And I think for some legitimate reasons, yes, it does back up 485 and that makes it rather unique. But I still, as hard as we work to redo the finding of facts, and we will do it again here, I still come back to the hardship resulting from actions taken by the homeowner. We've massaged it with power lines and trees, but basically there was some mistakes made. And so, well, with that, is there any more questions or comments? We'll go into deliberations. All right, so the hearing is closed. We will now go into deliberations. Comments from anyone?
Based on the proximity to 485 and the avoidance of power lines and trees, I would vote to approve the variance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williamson. Mr. Young, comment?
No comments here. I just second Mr. Williams.
Okay, Ms. Sun?
Sun, yes.
Yes to what?
Mr. Williamson.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, do I hear a motion then to approve this variance?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Williamson and Mr. Young have made the motion. Mr. Young?
Yeah.
Ms. Sun?
Sun, yes.
Mr. Shea?
Nay.
Mr. Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Dryden? No. But the variance is approved. And now we need to make the corrections. Ms. Hewitt, can we use the template that we used for the last one to kind of do this one, or do we need to start from scratch?
You may use the same findings that you had in the previous case, as long as every board member believes that they are consistent with the evidence that was presented for this particular case, and that those same facts are supported by the facts you heard in this particular hearing. So I would ask you all to review those as they were previously made and ensure that that you have similar factual basis for this particular case, and make that determination for the record.
All right, with that in mind, we need to look at number 11 and make sure that we have the hardship. So we need to say the hardship does result from the strict application of the ordinance, because
applicant received an approved permit, period, after permit number. Is that correct? We want to go with that? Yes, people?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Moving on then, to number 12. And we have reworded that to read the hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property because of the close proximity to Interstate 485, period. Is that how you want it to read?
Yes.
Okay. Number 13, the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner due to structure positioning away from, because the structure being placed away from, where am I? The existing power lines and trees on the property.
That's correct.
And number 14, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit and purpose of the ordinance because granting the variance would not devalue the quality of life of surrounding neighbors. And we're eliminating number 15. Then moving on to conclusions of law, number 1, you're taking out the word not. Number 2, you're taking out the word not. Number 3, we're adding does not. And number 4 is not. You're taking out the word not in number 4. Are there any other changes to the finding of facts and conclusions of law that you need to add?
No, ma'am.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law for this case as amended?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, now roll call vote. Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, no.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Young, yeah.
Dryden, no. All right, thank you very much. This concludes. We did not approve the minutes. Do we have the minutes? Oh, okay. I've already signed my copy yet, but yes, we do need to approve them though. I signed them, but we need to approve them. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes
Motion to approve last month's minutes.
from Mr. Shea? Do I hear a second?
I second.
Mr. Young, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved from our May meeting. Thank you. This concludes the Unified Development Ordinance Zoning Board of Adjustment. Thank you very much.